Hi, I'm Alex Popham. I'm the 4-H agent here in Breckinridge County, part of UK's College of Ag, Food, and Environment's Cooperative Extension Service. And this video is a shout out to all of our 4-H Poultry Club members that have been exploring and learning about eggs all year. And today we're going to be reviewing the parts of the egg, working from the external features in, as well as looking at the quality or actually getting to grade the eggs. So let's start with just a regular egg. And you'll notice on the outside surface, everyone's familiar with the eggshell. The eggshell is just an outer covering that accounts for about 9 to 12% of the egg's total weight. Of course, that depends on the size of the egg, but about 9 to 12% of its weight. And it's the first line of defense that an egg has against any kind of bacterial contamination. So that eggshell is very important, that it stays intact and protecting all of the edible parts of the egg inside from bacterial contamination. Now, there is an invisible covering on the eggshell. It's referred to as the cuticle. And over time, it actually gets absorbed into the pores of the shell and will dry and fall off. But it also provides an additional layer of protection. And then if we were to look just inside of the eggshell, there would be an inner and an outer membrane. Again, just more structure and protection. But what's really cool about those membranes, and we'll get to see it when we candle in a few minutes, but there is a air cell that gets trapped in between that inner and outer membrane. And it's a good way to tell the age of the egg, because the older the egg is or less fresh it is, the larger that air cell will be. So we'll actually get to candle or shine a light through the egg and take a closer look at that air cell. So that's everything that you can kind of see or learn about from the outside of the egg. Now we're actually going to look at some eggs that I've cracked open and examine the internal structures. So once you get inside of that inner membrane on the other side of the shell, everybody's pretty familiar with the yolk as well as the egg white, which is referred to as albumin. So we'll start with the yolk. The yolk is this yellow center, and it makes up about 33% of the egg's liquid weight and contains all the fat. So it's rich in fat and also contains a little less than half of the entire protein in the egg. So this is a pretty important part of the egg because it has all of that fat and protein content. All right, and then there's a small feature, if you'll take a look right here towards the end of my toothpick, this little germinal disc, this little dent that's slightly off color, that is the site where the embryo would form, and we refer to that again as the germinal disc. And it's not super noticeable, but you can kind of take a look and check that out right there on the yolk. So germinal disc. All right. As we move away from the yolk, you'll see that the egg white or the albumin has two different thicknesses. So there's a thick albumin that's really close to the yolk. And as you move further out away from the yolk, you'll see a thinner albumin. All right, and the albumin or the egg white is referred to as an egg white because when you cook it, this part of the egg here will actually turn white. So everybody's pretty familiar with the egg whites. Albumin accounts for most of an egg's liquid weight. About 67% of the egg's weight is here in the egg white. And it's very packed with vitamins and minerals, so a lot of nutrition in this portion of the egg. Now right here next to the toothpick, this kind of rope-like stringy part of the albumin, that is the chalaise. And this other example that I have cracked open, you can really see the chalaise. So this is not a defect of the egg. This is something that is just part of the egg structure and holds this entire yolk in place in the center of the egg. So again, it's just part of the albumin. It's tightly wound. It's a very tight structure that's attached to the yolk right here and will allow that yolk to sit safely in the center of the egg. So just providing additional structure and safety. So these are all the internal structures. Again, we have the yolk, we have the albumin, both thick and thin, with the thick being closely packed next to the yolk. And then we have the chalaise, and then the germinal disc, okay? So next we're gonna actually grade our eggs, and you can do that several different ways, but we're gonna do it by grading these 2 eggs that I've cracked open, and then we're gonna get to do some candling. So if you were to look at these 2 eggs side by side, you would see that there's quite a striking difference. So this particular egg, the yolk sits up a little higher than the other egg on top of that albumin, and this thick albumin is sticking pretty close together. It's very thick. You don't see it spreading across the plate. And then you have this thin albumin. So a nice separation. You can see different colors between the thick and thin. When I go over to this second example, you can see that that albumin is spreading all over the plate, so in a very wide area, and you have a lot of trouble telling the difference between the thick and the thin albumin. That thick albumin has become more watery, has spread. It's not that thick, beautiful consistency that we see in the other example. So because of that reason, I would give this particular egg the grade of B, and this particular egg would get an A, so a grade A, just because of the freshness and the quality. It's a little higher quality grade than the other example. Now, in order to be an AA grade egg, you would see even less of this thin albumin. All of it would be much more tightly packed towards the yolk, and that yolk would be sitting up even higher on top of our egg whites, okay? So now what we want to do is actually grade it by candling. Again, that's just by shining a light. I'm going to be using a flashlight today and just shining that light into the eggshell and finding that air cell. The bigger the air cell, the less fresh the egg is, or the older the egg is. So let's try it out. So I'm just shining my light onto this particular egg, and you can see that it has a huge air cell. This is a very old egg that one of my office mates donated for this candling, and you can see that it's not very fresh, right? It still has quite a large air cell. All right, let's compare it to a fresher egg that I have over here in this carton. You can see that the air cell is much smaller. So the egg is a little fresher. It's not as old as our other example. So candling is just a quick and easy way to get an idea of how long air has been able to get trapped in between that inner and outer membrane. So not as long here, so it's a fresher, younger egg. So those are a couple different ways to be able to grade eggs and look at the quality, and then we also got to explore the parts of the egg. So Poultry Club members, what I want you to do at home is crack open some eggs, candle some eggs, and share photos below. And I hope everyone's staying well and safe at home. Have an excellent day. See ya.